Coming to you from Brick House in downtown Brooklyn, this is 112BK. On the show today, a local reaction to the killing of dozens in Gaza. Then, the chairman of the New York State Conservative Party will talk about upcoming elections, including a hotly contested primary in southern Brooklyn. Plus, National Tap Dance Day is coming up. We'll remember one of the greats who has Brooklyn ties. Hi and welcome to the show. I'm Ashley Ford, and I'm joined by producer Ross Tuttle.
Hello, Ashley.
Hello, Ross.
How you doing?
I'm okay. Are we going to talk about what happened in Gaza yesterday?
We are, but where to begin? I mean, I guess with the 62 killed, the more than 2,000 wounded.
I gotta say, Ross, I've been told for a really long time that this conflict is more complicated than I understand or that I've accurately grasped, and in some parts and places that may be true, but I have to say, a group of unarmed people being killed by a military, to me, does not seem like the kind of values we espouse or the ones that we claim to be fighting for.
Or that we should be supporting, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly disproportional use of force. I mean, and that I think it was the Israeli Defense Forces said that was standard operating procedure, that if they were attacked, in quotes, or felt they were under attack, they should be using live fire, which I think is crazy. I think people are quibbling about armed, unarmed, and they were, and what kinds of means these individuals were using to kind of, approach the border, approach the fence, and as Israel says, try to get through. And once, if they were to get through, that they were going to then be a threat to Israel, but still, it seems like there'd be a lot of means to try to diffuse this. And of course, we should roll back, decades and have diffused it, a long time ago, and it's tragic.
And of course, everyone is talking today about that split screen with the embassy christening. America sent New York's finest, Steve Mnuchin, Jared Kushner, and Ivanka Trump to preen on camera while just, 60 miles away was carnage. Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then somebody who wasn't there was Chuck Schumer, but he was there in spirit, of course, because he was one who backed this move, praised the move of the embassy to Jerusalem, and then didn't even have time to mention anything about the deaths on his Twitter feed yesterday or today, as far as the time of taping, yet was wishing Melania Trump get well soon after your kidney surgery.
Well, I certainly hope she gets well soon.
Ditto.
Sounds awesome to have the opportunity to get well.
Yes.
Just saying.
So to talk more about what happened in Gaza yesterday, Monday, and to talk about what the response is going to be here locally, we have Rani Al-Hindi, who is a co-founder of the Palestine Solidarity Alliance of Hunter College. He'll talk about a protest that he's planning, hopefully, for Brooklyn in the coming days. Rani, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for the introduction.
Rani, over the past month, the Israeli forces have killed over 100 Palestinians since the Great Return March happened. At least 62 Palestinians were killed yesterday. Could you give us some context for this conflict?
Since March 30th, which was Land Day, Palestinians in Gaza have been demonstrating for their fundamental and sacred right to return, which is absolutely guaranteed under international law, under UN General Assembly Resolution 194. And it's repeatedly and consistently affirmed by international law. And Palestinians are basically demanding this basic right. Gaza also, to give more context, has been under siege for over 10 years, which is a form of occupation. People might argue the occupation ended in 2005, but actually, civilians in Gaza have been describing the siege as even worse than the on-ground occupation that they used to undergo before 2005.
And Rani, what is your response? When people are talking about whether it was peaceful, whether it was armed, unarmed, but what is your response to those who say that Israel does have a right to defend itself and that this was a mob that was mobilized by Hamas intent on harming Israelis?
Well, it's pretty clear, from the pictures, from the videos, from the own stories that the civilians are telling us, that there has been no violence by Palestinians. And even under the Geneva Convention and under international law, when, let's say, someone throws a Molotov to the other side of the border, which is a very disproportionate amount of force, compared to shooting people and bombing them, it's very disproportionate, and it's a very isolated incident that doesn't end up happening much. So what the Israeli military ends up doing is a form of collective punishment, which is also illegal, and thousands of Palestinians end up being affected by this policy.
Let me ask you, how does the relocation of the U.S. Embassy play into all of this?
Well, the latest move is just another act of support for crimes that have been committed by the Israeli army. The U.S. is reaffirming and strongly asserting its own support for the Israeli government's policies. The U.S. is giving a green light to the Israeli government to continue the land grabbing and ethnic cleansing.
And so, Rani, if you could just tell us about the rally that you're planning for the weekend, although it may get rained out, so you may have to reschedule.
We have been discussing a plan to organize a protest at Grand Marshal in front of the farmers market this Saturday, followed by a protest to Chuck Schumer's house. We have seen the weather, and given that there's a high chance it will rain, we probably will not go in accordance with this plan anymore, and we're still in discussion about alternative plans we might do, including the idea of having an indoor event this time. And the event is co-sponsored by my group, the Palestine Solidarity Alliance of Hunter College, the Apartheid Divest Campaign at CUNY, Jewish Voice for Peace, which is a large solidarity Jewish-based organization, NYU Students for Justice in Palestine, NYU Jewish Voice for Peace, Adela New York, the Campaign to Boycott Israel, and Queers Against Israeli Apartheid.
And Rani, where can people go to stay up to date with the latest plans for the rally and for the protest?
It's all available online. They can go to either of the group's pages. You can also go to my group's page, that's the Palestine Solidarity Alliance of Hunter College. Every event we're either endorsing or co-sponsoring is listed there, and we continuously update our members and supporters.
Rani, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being able to let us know what's going on in Gaza, explaining some of that to us, and also letting us know what work you're doing right here in New York.
Thank you for taking your time to interview me. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, I had to cut this conversation short for the broadcast audience, but if you'd like to hear the entire conversation, please tune into the podcast.
Coming up, Jarrett's conversation with Conservative Party Chairman Michael Long.
New York State is known as blue country, but barely half the state's 12.4 million registered voters are Democrats. A couple million voters belong to no party at all. Nearly 500,000 are registered members of the Independence Party, although probably many of them just wanted to be independent of any label. Then there's the Conservative Party, with 155,000 members statewide and about 20,000 here in the city, which is small, but in a year when an actress is running for governor and the ex-attorney general is running for cover, who knows what factors will be decisive in campaign 2018. Joining us today, hailing from Brooklyn, is Michael Long, the chairman of the Conservative Party of New York State. Welcome, Chairman Long. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you.
Tell us, viewers who are uninitiated, a little bit about the Conservative Party. Where does it come from? What's it about?
Well, we were formed back in 1962. And the reason we were formed, there was a Liberal Party at that time in New York State. And the Liberal Party had a pretty good hold on both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. One would think they had the hold on the Democratic Party only. But if you think back to the 60s, you had John Lindsay, you had Jake Javits, Nelson Rockefeller. So the Liberal Party played a very big influence. Louis Lefkowitz, the Attorney General. So they would pick, and they were dragging the Republican Party to the left. And they were dragging a lot of Democrats to the left at the time. So we were born in 1962. We achieved the ballot status that year, the first year that we were involved. Ran a businessman from upstate, and he got 136,000 votes, which established us. You need 50,000 votes to establish yourself as a party. And 4 years later, Professor Adams ran for governor against Nelson Rockefeller. He got over 500,000 votes. And we not only would now establish ourselves as a real bona fide party, but he moved us to row C. So your ballot position is designated by the amount of votes you get.
Votes you get, right?
Right. So we took row C. Bill Buckley, William F. Buckley ran for mayor against John Lindsay. I think that really put the Conservative Party on the map. He got over pretty close to 400,000 votes, 360 some odd thousand votes for mayor. His brother then ran in '68 and got over 1 million votes, Jim Buckley. And for the United States Senate. In 1970, he ran again for the United States Senate. He didn't want it, but we sort of walked him into it, including his brother, and he wound up winning. He got over 2 million votes.
And you mentioned those were the days when one heard a lot about liberal Republicans. Nowadays, the Republican Party is seen, I think, by most observers as being more conservative than
Correct.
that. So what's the role of the Conservative Party in New York State and in New York City today? I mean, do you mainly endorse Republicans?
In the early days of the party, we endorsed a lot of Democrats. There were, I guess you could call them blue door Democrats. Many of them were very conservative. But the Democratic Party has moved away from any centrist position. And our job as a party is clearly to, we do endorse a few Democrats upstate. But for the most part, I guess you could say the truth in packaging for the Republican Party. We keep them in, I'd like to say we keep them on the right road.
So let's talk about some of the races that are coming up this year. First of all, in Staten Island, you have the congressional primary. And something in Brooklyn, too, I should mention. Michael Grimm and the incumbent Dan Donovan. What do you think about that race?
Well, we've endorsed Dan Donovan. Dan had an outstanding career as a DA. I've known him for a lot of years. I know Michael Grimm, too. But Michael Grimm has done a lot of tripping in his political career, to say the least. And I think ultimately, right now, a lot of people are talking about Grimm is coming on strong and he's going to take that. I ultimately believe the people are going to do the right thing at the end, next month at the primary, and Donovan will survive.
What do you think? Why do you think that's the right thing exactly?
Well, look, I think Michael Grimm, he betrayed his office. I'm not saying that anyone else never did what he did. I think he got a raw deal. I think he's one of the only people I ever know that went to prison for what he did. Usually people got a fine. But he really, whether he brought it on himself or not, he wound up being sent to prison for tax evasion. And most people I don't know if anyone went to prison for tax evasion, okay, in the political process, okay, in modern days. But he served 8 months, and he lied to why he shouldn't run again. It's not necessarily because of his missteps on tax evasion. He lied to the constituents. At the time, during the race, when he was running, he kept saying he was innocent, and he won the election after being indicted, and then right after the election, he pleaded guilty to everything and then went to jail. So he betrayed the voters of the district, in all honesty.
One feature of that race is the Republicans competing for who or talking about how they view the president. What do you feel about President Trump? And is he a true conservative? He's a guy who is a trade protectionist. The budget he signed spends a lot of money. His lawyer paid off, apparently, a pornographic movie star. Are those traditional conservative values? Are they in line with your approach?
Look, there's no question about it that Donald Trump's a populist and possesses a lot of conservative views. In matter of fact, many of the things he's accomplishing, the conservative movement endorses clearly. Whether it's him getting Kim at the table in North Korea, whether most people were pretty scared about when Trump kept saying, pushing the button, that he's going to bring him to the table. And he brought him to the table. When we ripping up the Iran deal, I think that's an important thing. Bringing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, okay? I think he's done a lot, and then his tax cut program clearly is very conservative. The appointment of a good conservative Supreme Court judge. So I am more than pleasantly surprised of what he's accomplished as President of the United States and support his policies. I don't always support everything he says or everything he has claimed to have done. Clearly, I don't think he's a movement conservative. He never was. But he certainly is governing as a conservative. And he's been a populist his whole life.
A right-wing populist, conservative populist.
I guess conservative-minded populist. But he danced with the Democrats as a businessman because he needed to do that as a businessman in the state of New York.
So speaking of New York, here politics has been turned upside down by the past couple of weeks by the resignation of Attorney General Schneiderman. There's a question now about what should be happening with that vacancy. Some debate about whether it's appropriate to appoint an interim AG or not. What do you want to see happen there?
I think the Constitution says it's appropriate to appoint an interim. The governor and the legislature has a right to appoint to fill out the term. All the other nonsense that you hear in the press and from the various elected officials, the people should decide. The bottom line is the Constitution says very clearly, appoint someone to finish the term. Conventions are right around the corner. That's what makes it a little uncomfortable for someone to do that, for the Assembly to do that, and the Senate to do that, and the governor to sign off on it. So you have an acting Attorney General there. I see nothing wrong with appointing that acting Attorney General. It doesn't appear that she wants to run for a full term.
Full gig, right.
And then let the political process work out. Let the Democrats have their primary of the 44 people that want to run for Attorney General, and then let the Republicans, conservatives select the candidate for AG, and let the voters decide then in November.
In November, you'll have most likely Marcus Molinaro as the GOP nominee, and he will have Conservative Party backing too, I believe. Is that
That's
true?
Correct.
And does he have a chance against Governor Cuomo?
Look, I think when you look at the amount of corruption that has taken place in the state of New York, we just got done talking about the AG. All you have to do is look at the governor's closest aide. As a matter of fact, the family called him the third son. The indictment of his closest aide. Other pending indictments coming down. The Buffalo billion. I think the governor has some problems, and he certainly has not shown the temperament of good leadership. You take Cynthia Nixon has really made a track star out of him, running to the left. Anything she says, whatever she does, she holds a press conference, he immediately keeps moving to the left instead of governing. When he lost the he possessed the Working Family Party endorsement. When he ran the last 2 times. The last time, the mayor had to bail him out to get him the endorsement. And his actions last year during the mayor's race, I don't agree with Bill de Blasio. I don't agree with Andrew Cuomo. But there's no need for the governor of the state of New York to actually slap the mayor around 1 whole year during the election. He purposely did everything he could do to hurt the mayor. It was uncalled for. The governor shouldn't act that way. Then when the Working Family Party announces that they decide not to support him, he starts telling people, rip up my phone number, don't call me anymore. He starts punishing those people that voted against him, making it very clear and playing, I guess, rough style politics. Instead of being the governor of the state of New York and saying, look, they're a minor party. They selected Cynthia Nixon, an actress. That's fine. I'm the governor of the state of New York. I'm going to run for re-election on the Democratic line. I'm going to win this election.
So let me ask you, about 45 seconds left. As I mentioned, 20,000 or so registered conservatives in Brooklyn. It's a borough of a couple million people. I imagine it must feel a little lonely sometimes. For a conservative here, what do you think is the top issue facing the city and state?
Well, clearly, the high taxes and the amount of money that's being spent. We cannot continue to sustain down the road. My children and my grandchildren are not going to be able to live in this city if we keep spending and taxing at the rate we do.
Conservative Party Chairman for New York State, Michael Long, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you.
In a moment, tap dancing.
Bill Bojangles Robinson. If you don't know the man, you surely know the name Bojangles. Not to be confused with Mr. Bojangles from the song, who was inspired by Bill Robinson, tap dancer extraordinaire, who just so happens to be buried in Bushwick's Evergreen Cemetery. May 25th is the anniversary of his birth in 1878, and rightfully, it's also National Tap Dance Day. In commemoration, BK Dance Festival, the Schomburg Center, and Alvin Ailey Studios are organizing a weekend of tap and jazz. We just saw one of the performers who will be there, Jarrett Grant. Great job. We're also joined by Tamia Santana, producer of the Tap Family Reunion. Thanks for coming on the show. And tap dancer Jason Samuel Smith. Welcome to 112BK.
Thank you.
Tamia, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about the Tap Dance Weekend and the programming that you guys are planning for that?
Yes, it's an amazing weekend that we have planned. The first thing I want to start out by saying is that I'm also co-producing it with Elka Samuel Smith, who's not here today, but we've been working really hard to make this a great event. We love and honor and think that our artistic directors are amazing, which is Jason Samuel Smith, Dormisha Sumphrey-Edwards, who's not here today, and Derek Grant. They had this vision of really holding true to what the national Black art form of tap dance is and carrying on the legacy and the history, and we really wanted to see that vision come true. So we have a lot of amazing things for the weekend. On Thursday, we have Bill Bojangles Robinson, his archives that we're unveiling at the Schomburg Center at 1 p.m., so we look forward to seeing everyone there. On Friday, we have a free performance that's open to the public, where artistic directors are also artistic directing the show, and we have a performance celebrating and having birthday and champagne and really celebrating who Bill Bojangles was, dressed to impress, so make sure that you come correct if you're going to come, but we'd love to see you. On Saturday at Alvin Ailey Studios, we have all-day tap workshops, and we have from basic beginner, if you've never tapped before, all the way up to advanced. We are really committed and here to having as many people share this wealth of information and the education about tap that these amazing directors can provide. They have some fun events like a family tap feud. So we're going to talk about some history and make it fun for people to learn, and then a cutting contest that they might be able to talk a little bit more about. We have a tap con, selling memorabilia, people trading things, just talking about tap, people coming together to really celebrate this art form. And then on Sunday, we end at Swing 46 with a tap jam.
Sounds amazing. Do you know Elka Samuel Smith?
I've heard of her, you know.
Yeah, I was just wondering. The name sounded, and then I just wondered, yeah.
That's my sister and also my manager, but we've been working together. Actually, my sister started tap dancing before me, so I give a lot of credit for everything I'm doing to my sister. So, and she's done a lot of work to help us with this event.
And were you also inspired by Mr. Smith?
Well,
Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Robinson.
Look at it. You better be inspired by Mr. Smith.
Well, his dad is a dancer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mr. Smith. Yeah, no, Mr. Robinson has been one of the cornerstones of our art form. You know, some of the earliest footage I can remember seeing of tap dance was of him. You know, and he's known for a lot of things in our art form. I mean, he gets credit for the chair dance, not the chair dance, the stair dance.
Yes.
He does a very famous stair dance. His tap shoes had wooden soles instead of the metal taps that we use today, so they produced a very unique sound. His style was very, clear and crisp. He didn't syncopate a lot of his rhythms, so the rhythms were more military-like. But he was also a pioneer. I mean, he was one of the first performers in vaudeville to not wear blackface. One of the first performers to not perform with a partner. I believe there was a two-man rule where each black performer had to perform with a partner. So he was the first soloist to perform, headline on a major vaudeville show with other white performers. He was the first to do a lot. And so a lot of people, I think, criticize him for maybe his artistic offerings, because a lot of people think that he was cooning or, just bringing our culture down, when in fact he was trying to represent us on the highest plateau, and he opened a lot of doors for us. And we're trying to celebrate those contributions and the fact that he was a New Yorker. He was known as the mayor of Harlem.
Right.
You know what I mean? So people in the neighborhood knew him. He walked around, he knew everybody. So we want to bring the identity of tap dance back to New York City, make sure New Yorkers celebrate this art form and celebrate this culture, and know that it's theirs. These things, a lot of these things that we're celebrating, these people, they were here in New York. They were residents here. One of the things that we're doing on Sunday is a scavenger hunt, but it's really it's to acknowledge monuments that we have in tap culture in New York City, pre-existing.
So an opportunity to learn. And really appreciate what has already been here for us to appreciate.
And celebrate while learning.
And celebrate while learning. I love that. Derek, can you tell me really quickly, aside from his birthday, aside from National Tap Dance Day, what's another reason it's so important for us to remember Mr. Robinson?
Well, to stay connected. It's the legacy, and he set the bar. As far as I'm concerned, everything that we do from this point on has to meet a certain level of excellence, and that all starts with Bill Robinson.
How do people get tickets to come see the shows?
Type in Tap Family Reunion NYC.
Fantastic. While Jason is getting ready to dance for us, here's what's on the show tomorrow. LGBTQ seniors will talk about the Griot Circle, plus an upcoming event at Brick House, Freedom Dreaming, a call to imagine. I'll let you imagine what that's about, but check it out tomorrow and see if you were right.